Hi everybody, we're going to get started tonight with our next lesson, week 12, which is on adverbs. So for some reason this managed to shut. Sorry about that. I thought it was pulled open. All right, so we're going to, not adverbs, adjectives. So we're going to be looking at adjectives today, but we are going to talk a little bit about adverbs. But before we get started, I want to go over our announcements. Reminder that you do have quiz 4 due by tonight over the verbs. Please make sure you take it. When I looked earlier today, only 6 people had taken it, and I want to make sure that we can go over some of the things that you had challenges with before a second attempt. So I'm not going to do that tonight since we only have 6 people who've taken the quiz, but please do make sure you take the quiz by the end of the day today. Also read Chapter 6 on the adjectives and the resources on cover letters that are posted in the course site. Then go ahead and work on writing assignment number 3, which I'm going to give you information about today, and that will be due week 16. I've moved that back, so it's going to be due at the very end of the class. But you will, I will talk about it today, and you should actually have some time because this isn't going to take the full class time to get started on it today. And then there will be 2 more quizzes. We'll have a quiz 5, which will cover the adjectives we talk about tonight, as well as adverbs, interjections, and material that we'll go over in the next couple of weeks. And then we will have a final quiz. This isn't a final exam, as I mentioned. It's just the same as a normal quiz, except for it is comprehensive. So it will include items from like the beginning of the semester as well as these items. It is weighted a little bit more, but it's not any longer or more intensive. It is simply it's like 15 to 20 questions. The only thing is that you'll see some questions that will have come from earlier lessons instead of the lesson right before, like we've been doing. All of the questions are questions you've seen before. They're either from earlier quizzes or they're the questions that you wrote yourselves for the quiz that you developed. If they are those questions, you will get those questions beforehand. We will go over them and you'll get a list of them. All right, so let's move on to adjectives. But again, before that, just want to go over last week's review. So we did a full verb review last week. We also talked about a few new quote-unquote things with verbs. We looked at collective nouns and subject-verb agreement, although that is something we looked at during the first week as well. And then we looked at what happens when subjects and verbs are separated and what happens when subjects are joined by connecting words. So let's get into the adjectives. So an adjective is this part of speech that modifies, means it describes, limits, or qualifies nouns and pronouns. Adjectives provide more specific information that make a message more meaningful. So in the example here, Gary drove his car to the dinner. Well, most people who went to the dinner probably drove their cars because that's how most people get around unless you're in the city or you took public transport or you called an Uber. So that sentence is a little bit, it's not complete when you're trying to get across this meaning. Now, Gary drove his classic car to the dinner. Well, that pretty much explains probably why we're talking about Gary driving to the dinner, because a classic car, what kind of car? A classic car, it's interesting, so it makes the message more complete, and in this case, probably explains why we're talking about Gary driving. Notice that an adjective can only modify a noun or a pronoun. Adverbs, on the other hand, modify verbs, other adverbs, and adjectives. So if we're modifying any part of speech that's not a noun or a pronoun, that's going to be an adverb, not an adjective. An adjective can only modify nouns and pronouns. And that's a big difference between the two. So I have a lot of people who will say to me, I don't understand the difference between an adjective and adverb because both are modifying verbs. Well, now you know the difference. Types of adjectives are descriptive adjectives, and we're going to talk about limiting adjectives. Descriptive adjectives provide details about a noun or a pronoun. They often end in these suffixes that you'll see here, but one that I want to call out is ly, because you've probably heard a teacher at some point in your life saying, oh, only adverbs end in ly, or all adverbs end in ly. Well, neither of those is the case, actually. Adjectives end in ly too. There are many adverbs that do end in ly. And in fact, the reason why I think so many teachers use that as a teaching tool, if you see an ly, it's probably an adverb. Now that's not altogether incorrect. Most adverbs do end in ly. So you will probably see a lot of adverbs that end in ly. And so that's not altogether wrong to say if you see an ly hint, it's likely to be an adverb. But know that there are adjectives that end in ly too. So if you, and then also there are adverbs that do not end in ly. So make sure that you are double checking what role it actually plays in the sentence. ly is good to remember, that because many adverbs do end in ly, but it doesn't mean it's necessarily an adverb. And the reason that I think many teachers use this is because a lot of times people forget the ly, like they don't use the ly correctly when they're saying an adverb. So, he did bad instead of he did badly. Badly is correct. So I think maybe that's one of the reasons why you have a lot of like elementary and middle school teachers saying that. But just remember, you do really need to evaluate, is this word modifying a noun or a pronoun? If so, it's an adjective, even if it ends in ly. All right, predicate adjectives, that's described in page 100 of your textbook. And this kind of goes along with what we said about linking verbs. So we learned that linking verbs are not action verbs. And linking verbs connect a subject to a condition or a state of being. The words like is and are. Predicate adjectives are those conditions or state of beings. So when you have the students are happy. Students, that's the noun, are the subject of the sentence. Are is the linking verb. And happy is the predicate adjective. So it's an adjective that's a descriptive adjective that follows a linking verb. That's that thing that follows the linking verb. So before we talked about verbs, we learned what the linking verb is, and we said, oh, it connects the subject to a condition or state of being. Now we know what to call that condition or state of being. We know what to call it a predicate adjective. And one thing you should know about this is that most of the time, or many times, adjectives actually come right before the nouns or pronouns they modify. The happy students, the ugly duckling, the beautiful day, right? But you also have this situation where you have the linking verb. The day is beautiful. The duckling is ugly. The students are happy. The teachers are ready. And then you have the prepositional phrase in there for summer break. So when you have that situation, we call it a predicate adjective. It's an adjective that is connected by a linking verb to the subject. So now you know all of those parts. You can say, oh, that's a noun, it's the subject. That's the verb, it's the it's a linking verb. And now we know what the predicate adjective is. It's this adjective, it's in the predicate. So, and it's the condition of the state of being. So now you know all of those things. Okay. Also, we need to know that sometimes words, they look like they're nouns or they look like they're participles or verbs, but they're actually used as adjectives. So this is why it's so important to say, how exactly is this used in a sentence? So, for example, the word Idaho. Well, Idaho is a place. We know that nouns are people, places, and things. But in this case, Idaho is actually used as an adjective. The Idaho team won the tournament. What team? The Idaho team. Insurance is usually a noun. It's a thing. But the insurance agent called today. What kind of agent? Insurance agent. Exhausted. Exhausted is normally a verb. I'm exhausted. He's exhausted. Last night was William's, my 3-year-old's, birthday party. And tonight, the reason why we're doing a recorded lesson is my 5-year-old is graduating from preschool. So I am exhausted. But in this case, we have an exhausted team. So what kind of team? The exhausted team. In these situations, these things, they look like other parts of speech, but they're actually being used as adjectives. So they can be used as adjectives, and that is okay. So you need to be able to identify them as such. So just like I was saying before with the adverbs, the LYs, make sure you know how it's used as a sentence. Is this saying, Idaho is cold? Well, in that case, Idaho is the subject of a sentence. It's a noun. Or the Idaho team. Okay, well, the team is actually the subject of the sentence here, so Idaho is telling you which team. And one thing you should notice about this, too, if you look, I have that sentence right here again, because Idaho is capitalized here. So you can have proper adjectives, adjectives that are derived from proper nouns. In that case, they're capitalized. Idaho, again, is a specific place, so it should be capitalized. Shelby likes Thai food. That's derived from Thailand, so Thai needs to be capitalized. One thing that your book talks about in page 101, though, is that we have some adjectives that no longer are really referring to their specific place or their specific, the thing that makes them proper. So the example is Brussels sprouts. Well, Brussels is a place in Belgium, but when we say Brussels sprouts, we're not really talking about sprouts from Brussels. Like we're talking about a kind of food that we call Brussels sprouts. That's a like broccoli or carrots. We don't capitalize those, right? They're not really specific. So in that case, it might look like it's supposed to be capitalized, but you don't capitalize that because it's no longer really bearing meaning to its original, deriving meaning from its original proper noun. Now, if you said, the Brussels students, maybe the students from Brussels, then you would capitalize that because it's just like you'd say the Parisian students or the Indiana students or the Idaho students. You would capitalize that because it refers to a proper noun. It's deriving its meaning from a proper noun. Compound adjectives consist of two or more words that are combined to express a single characteristic or concept. High speed, fast pace, high quality, top level, forward thinking, those kinds of words. One single concept, but you've got two words to express them, and they're used as an adjective. Most of the time, you use a hyphen in these situations. But remember that sometimes these words will play different roles in a sentence. So just like the ly and just like the proper adjective, I said, look for how they're being used as a sentence. In the sentence, for example, my high-speed internet service is expensive. In that case, we're hyphenating high speed. Both high speed and internet are modifying service, also expensive. So you actually have three adjectives in here that are modifying service. High speed is one concept modifying service. But you would not say the internet is working at a high speed. In that case, high speed is not an adjective that's modifying internet. Okay, we actually in this case though we have a high speed internet service. High speed is modifying service. Notice that there's no comma here between high speed and internet. Most of the time when you have two adjectives that are modifying a single noun, you do use a comma, but only when those adjectives are modifying the noun equally. So in this case, it would be or it would make sense to put and in the middle. We talked about this before. So in this case, my high speed and internet service, that's confusing. Now, one thing that you should notice is internet, whether it's a noun or whether it's an adjective. In this case, it is an adjective, but sometimes it's used as a noun too. So make sure that you are paying attention again to how it's used in a sentence. And the next thing I just want to mention very briefly is the capitalization of internet. Now, I'm bringing that up just because it is an example in this book, and I know somebody's going to ask me about it. So I did not see in Morson's a specific rule about capitalizing internet. If I just missed it, someone please let me know. I just said but so. So if I was in Toastmasters, I would get 3 strikes for saying all those things as fillers in public speaking. But internet was, at one point, there were many internets, right? Like, the internet, before it was that one conglomerate thing that we refer to as the internet now, there were internets in universities and internets in government organizations. Those were multiple internets. They were networks, intertwined networks. Then the internet was created. Everybody called it the internet, one specific thing, which is why we started capitalizing it. And when I was like in middle school and high school, you would see it capitalized all the time. Some publications now, like AP, which is the newspaper, governs how newspapers are written, and other publication manuals have dropped the capitalization of internet because now they're like internet's like television. It doesn't refer to one specific thing. It is like a utility or a commodity. But then, like Oxford English Dictionary, the last time I checked, it still does say to capitalize it. So the only reason I bring that up is because I know someone's going to ask me about it, and different style books call for different things. I didn't see anything specifically in Morson's about it. If anybody who is in one of your court reporting classes, there's more specific information about that, feel free to let me know. But I just wanted to bring it up to let you know that there is kind of a discrepancy there, and there's actually grammarians who feel very strongly on both sides of this. But I wanted to bring it up because I knew someone was going to ask me about why it was capitalized. Okay. Types of adjectives, limiting adjectives. So limiting adjectives, which you can find starting on page 102 in your book, they modify nouns and pronouns by making them more precise. They answer questions like how many or which one. Typical limiting adjectives, a, and, all, any, both, each. The list goes on. Notice, though, that some of these are also words that can be used as pronouns. So you have to make sure that you identify whether the adjective or whether the word is acting as a limiting adjective or if it's acting as a pronoun. So I'll talk about that more in a minute. Articles, a, and, or the, also sometimes called determiners, are limiting adjectives. They are limiting certain things. So instead of saying, when you say, a tree, the word a is actually modifying tree. But it's an indefinite modification. So indefinite articles are a and the, and because they make general references. Well, the is a definite article that refers to specific nouns. So the tree versus a tree, any tree, the tree, that one over there. Okay, but a, and, or the, they're all adjectives that are modifying the nouns, tree, or pronouns. So a, and, or the, all adjectives modifying, all adjectives that are modifying nouns. And there's definite and indefinite ones. Then also you have quantity adjectives, numbers, 100, 35, 62. Those are limiting, so like 35 M&Ms instead of just M&Ms. Specifically, how many? 35. And then words such as few, many, several, etc. Again, these also can be serve as pronouns. So you have to make sure you know where they come in the sentence. So examples, we delivered 100 dinners. 100 is a limiting adjective. How many dinners? 100. Several students voted. Several tells us how many students. It's an adjective. It's describing students. Several of the faculty attended the party. Several is a pronoun here. Of the faculty, that's a prepositional phrase. Several, and it's the subject of the sentence. Also, possessives and pronouns. Possessive nouns and personal pronouns in the possessive case can serve as limiting adjectives. Cammie's picture is lovely. Whose picture? Cammie's. It's an adjective modifying picture. Did you read my book? Whose book? Mine. Which book? It's an adjective modifying book. It tells us which one. Okay, so again, it's telling us more specific information about that noun. Then also demonstratives as adjectives. Words like this, that, these. Again, they can be pronouns, but they can also be adjectives. This book belongs to Ali. That's an adjective. It's explaining which book. This one. Not that one. Not the red one. This book. This book right here. But this is mine. This is actually the pronoun, and it's the subject of a sentence. So over and over again, it's kind of the same thing. We have to keep looking at the sentence and identifying specifically which, how the word is acting in the sentence. All right, so we've covered all that we're covering for adjectives today. You'll notice that there's some more in here when we're looking at comparisons, and we're looking at the degrees of comparison, comparative degree, superlative degree. We'll talk about those next time, and then we'll get into some of the adjectives as well, the adverbs as well. But I want to talk for a few minutes about writing assignment 3. So writing assignment 3 is pretty self-explanatory. It is a resume and cover letter. You're going to create a 1-page resume, unless you feel like you need 2 pages, and a cover letter for a job as a court reporter. You're going to use the resume and cover letter resources provided. So I provided an article about cover letters as well as some examples of cover letters. This project will be graded based on grammar as well as form. So does it look like a resume? Does it look like a cover letter? And effectiveness. So you're writing a letter that utilizes, we talked about some aspects of business writing, where we're trying to consider our tone and our audience. Are we doing that effectively? This is going to be due at the very end of class. Now, starting next week, I am going to provide some more information. I'll throw up a few more examples. We'll talk through even some of your examples. I want to pull up some of your examples for writing assignment 2 to talk about tone. So you are going to get some more information about this. We're going to look at some examples. For now, read the resources. Utilize the resources to get started. Again, you can always submit the information to me prior to review. So that is writing assignment number 3. So what I would like you to do with the extra time is I want you to read through the additional resources. Make sure you get that quiz done if you haven't gotten that quiz done. And then you can get started working on this writing assignment 3. But do know that we're going to keep doing a little bit. All of the rest of the communication aspects of this class will relate in some way to writing assignment 3. So I do want you to know you are going to be getting some different examples that we're going to talk about there. Okay? All right. So that's everything for tonight. Please feel free to let me know if you have any questions. If not, have a great night.